and welcome to the Visionary VA podcast, the go-to show for ambitious virtual assistants who are ready to stop trading their time for money and start scaling their businesses into thriving agencies. I'm Holly Copsey, founder of the award-winning agency Virtually Priceless and the Visionary VA Circle community. Each week, I'm here to bring you actionable strategies, proven systems, and mindset shifts to help you transition from a solo VA to a visionary agency owner. If you're ready to grow your business to dizzying new heights with less stress and more success, you're in the right place. Hello and welcome to the very first episode of the Visionary VA podcast. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Holly Copsey, founder of Virtually Priceless and the Visionary VA Circle. I'm so excited to start my podcasting journey and to be able to share with you the highs and lows of building my VA business over the last 6 years. It certainly hasn't all been plain sailing, and although I'm incredibly proud of what I've achieved and I love my business, at times it's been tough. Really tough. So, before we get stuck into the nitty-gritty of what it takes to build and grow your business, I thought it would be helpful to give you some insight into my life, who I am, what my background is, why I started my business, and why I started the Visionary VA community. Let's do this. For as long as I can remember, I've always wanted to run my own business. I just had no idea what that would look like. I grew up on a farm and watched my parents work incredibly hard running a livery stables, and they made it clear that once I left school, I couldn't join them. I'd have to go out into the big wide world and earn a living for myself, particularly if I wanted to continue competing my horses, which is a stupidly expensive and all-consuming hobby. I've never been afraid of hard work and started earning my own money from the age of 12, undertaking a multitude of part-time roles and ad hoc work throughout my teenage years, from waiting tables to training other people's horses, house-sitting to night shifts at Sainsbury's, and, along with my sisters, building a babysitting empire of over 50 families in the local area. I was a pretty average student. My grades were okay, but I never fitted in at school, so I went to college to take a business studies course at 16 instead. At 19, having never previously set foot on an aeroplane, I decided to go to Australia alone on a working holiday visa, and I had one of the best years of my life. Travelling around the country, working on fruit farms, in bars, even in a pepper factory. On my return, I was pretty clueless about what I wanted to do, but a friend had completed a Pitman Executive Secretary course, and being a natural-born organiser, I thought that could be a good option for me too. I loved the training and passed my exams with flying colours, then proceeded to apply for local roles as a PA. I was still riding my horses every day and competing regularly, so at that point commuting to London wasn't an option, as I needed to be at the stables before and after work. My first office job was a temping position at the local council, and they must have liked me as they extended my contract several times before I left to take up a role at one of the top selective girls' schools in the country. Hundreds of people had applied, and it was a position I never thought I'd actually get, but you have to be in it to win it, and I did, which was a huge confidence boost to 21-year-old me. I stayed there until I reached the top of the pay band 2 years later, and then moved to a private prep school where I supported 2 head teachers and ran the school office for the next 5 years. During that period, I sadly lost 2 of my horses, one to old age, the other to medical problems, and the final straw was my remaining horse picking up an injury, which meant his competition career was over. I was bored, broke, and emotionally drained. So I decided it was time to enter a new phase of life. An opportunity came up through a friend of a friend to apply for an assistant PA role in the chairman's office at Lloyds Bank in the heart of London, and I went for it. Much like that first school role I applied for, I didn't fancy my chances of success as I'd no city experience and my education background was a world away from that of the finance and banking industry. But my application managed to get me an interview, and during my interview, I volunteered to take a typing test on the spot, quite literally pulling up a chair at the desk in the room I was in, and I smashed out a 70-something word a minute score. The senior EA and I clicked, and she offered me the role on the spot. I was over the moon and absolutely bricking it at the same time. I felt sick, nervous, terrified, all the emotions, but also quietly confident. Because yes, I would be working for one of the UK's most prestigious financial institutions. Yes, I would be supporting the actual chairman, not just someone fairly senior. But because I knew deep down I had the skills, the professionalism, the intuition, the commitment to nail it. So I went out, bought a new wardrobe of clothes, got my first season ticket and started the daily commute. What I didn't know was that I was about to be well and truly thrown in at the deep end in one of those sink or swim moments. Not only did I join just as the Lloyds HBOS merger plans had just been announced, my new boss, Sir Victor Blank, was leading the deal, and the senior EA I was working alongside was called up for jury service just 2 weeks after I started. So, little old me, who'd never worked in London, suddenly found myself liaising with the offices of government ministers, the FCA, the Bank of England. I even had to make arrangements with Downing Street for him to meet with the Prime Minister. I was probably in way over my head, but I've never been one to shy away from a challenge, so I rolled up my sleeves and got stuck in. That experience taught me how to thrive in chaos and seize opportunities when they seem overwhelming, something I've had to do many times running my own business, and experience I now use to help others navigate their own challenges. I was only at Lloyds for 1 year, but what a year it was. At the end of it, the chairman decided to step down and we got shipped off to a private office with him. I started job hunting again and was offered a role in the chair's office at HSBC, but I was hesitant to accept. I was then put forward for a role at Barclays and interviewed successfully for the position of EA to the CEO of Barclaycard. This role was my absolute dream position. I was no longer the number 2 EA. I had the top job. My first CEO was an incredible American, Val Serrano-Keating, and she was new to both Barclays and the UK. My world revolved around hers, and I absolutely loved it. I worked crazy hours, earned great money, and had fantastic colleagues. We were a dream team. But that hankering to one day run my own business was very much still there. I was always thinking about what I might do, whether I'd have to retrain, how much I needed to earn before I could afford to take a pay cut to pivot my career. Barclays supported me in studying for a business degree through the Open University, and I absorbed as much knowledge and information in my role as possible, not only so I could carry out my EA role to the best of my ability, but because I just loved to learn new things, and I knew at some point I'd need to put those learnings into practice. My personal life also changed massively during those 5 years. I had stopped riding completely, I'd got engaged, married, and then fell pregnant with my first child. I took 6 months maternity leave following the arrival of my daughter, and going back to work so soon was a killer. We relied heavily on my salary, not to mention my bonus, and were still saving madly to buy our own house. So at that point, it just wasn't feasible not to work full time. But I knew at that point it wasn't sustainable, and that by the time my daughter would start school in 3.5 years' time, that I had to be doing something different. The clock had started ticking. I spent more and more time researching my options. The daily commute became focused time for planning the next phase of my life. I can't remember exactly when I stumbled across the idea of being a VA, but the minute I did, I knew it was the answer I'd been searching for. I wouldn't have to retrain. I could run my own business doing the exact same thing I'd been a pro at for the last 15 years. Interesting, and a true light bulb moment. So now I had a plan. Very sensibly, I then factored in having a second child before leaving Barclays, so I'd get that all-important maternity leave, and thankfully it all worked out. I fell pregnant when my daughter was 2.5, which meant I'd get some time off with her and the baby before she was due to start school. And I'd set up my business while I took maternity leave. My plan was perfect. Except, of course, things rarely go to plan when you're trying to map out life. It likes to throw curveballs our way. So, curveball number 1, At just 5 weeks pregnant, my relatively new boss, the second CEO I supported there, announced his plans to step down and retire that summer, and I had to talk to HR about my plans and what I wanted to do following his departure. I decided to be honest and to tell them about my pregnancy, much earlier, of course, than I would have liked, but done in the hope we could work out a deal where I could take redundancy post my maternity leave. Fortunately, they agreed, and I supported the CEO up until his departure before doing some ad hoc cover for other execs in the remaining months. Then curveball, actually more like wrecking ball, number 2 came along. At 7 months pregnant, only a month away from leaving the world of employment for good, my world came crashing down as my marriage fell apart. My then husband and I decided to separate, and he moved out just after our son arrived, when he was about 3 months old. That was the end of January 2018. I was now home alone with a 3.5-year-old daughter, a newborn baby, 2 dogs, and only 6 months away from the end of mat leave and facing unemployment. Like that moment I'd had when I started at Lloyd's, it was sink or swim, but on a much scarier scale. But giving up isn't an option when you've got children. That mama bear instinct kicks in. And to be honest, giving up isn't really my style. There are times like that where my stubbornness, resilience, and sheer bloody-mindedness has stood me in good stead, and I used every ounce of it. My mum certainly knows which buttons to press to get me going. We were chatting about my situation one day, and she casually said to me, "Darling, don't you think perhaps you should ask Barclays for your job back?" Well, you can imagine my response. It wasn't polite. But there was no way on earth I was about to give up on my dream of building a better life for me and my children. So that was it. I had 6 months to get my shit together and get a business off the ground. I spent every spare minute, when the kids were asleep, while I was feeding the baby, reading, learning, planning and plotting. I took a course on building a website and made one over a weekend. I researched tools, read up on best practices, joined tons of Facebook groups, followed inspirational leaders on social media. I decided I was going to take control of my own destiny and that my business was going to be a huge success. At least that's what I believed on the good days. When I'd had more than 2 hours sleep, when the children were behaving, when I was ignoring my personal life falling apart and calculating how long my savings pot would last. We won't talk about the bad days just yet. I'll save that for another time. So, fast forward to July 2018. I'd received my redundancy pay, which gave me a bit of a cushion for the first few months, and I finally launched my business to the world, wondering if I'd ever sign a client. Thankfully, I signed 2 up in the first month, one of whom is still a client today. I then had an amazing opportunity to work as an associate for the brilliant Kathy Soulsby, where I joined a team role with her biggest client for about 18 months. It totally opened my eyes to the possibilities of how a VA business could scale, working with bigger clients, building a team, and with Kathy being the chief coordinator of it all. My own business continued to grow quickly, and when COVID hit in 2020, not only did I find myself with 2 very young children at home alongside a full book of clients, one of my own associates had to step away for personal reasons, and I had to pick up her client too. Something had to give. So I stepped away from the associate role and decided I had to rethink my own business model. I needed to earn more, as well as manage the responsibility of my children and childcare costs and running a home alone. I expanded my associate team and reduced my own client hours and started placing all new clients with team members from the get-go. The business more than tripled in 2021, and by the time the business turned 3 years old, I had a team of 10 associates. In 2022, I hired my first employee, and by July 22, the team size was 21. In 2023, we took on a further 4 employees, bringing the overall team size to 30, and we consistently hit over 50k per month turnover. We also celebrated our 5th birthday with a swanky meal and a rooftop bar in London. It was a huge moment of reflection for me in recognising how far we and I had come. Of course, reviewing all the stats such as team size, client hours and turnover across the years was amazing. But for me, it was just as much about the personal journey and how I'd survived it. 5 years in, my children were almost 9 and 6 years old. In those 5 years, I'd launched the business, navigated the world of co-parenting with my ex-husband, met an amazing new partner, survived lockdowns and homeschooling, moved house and created a blended family. Had lots of therapy. Started riding again, and not only bought a horse for myself, but also had acquired ponies for both children who'd started riding and competing. A lot had happened in 5 years, and it was incredible, and I was immensely proud, but it had very nearly broken me. There were some incredibly dark times buried within those years. The business had grown so quickly that at times it felt out of control. It took me too long to learn to delegate, to get help, to look at the bigger picture, to put together a proper strategy, to hire for the long term, to invest in the right things, to find the right people to turn to for support. The whole way through building my business, I'd often thought, wouldn't it be great to find someone who'd walked my path and built the business I was striving for? I had conversations with other VAs who were also running bigger businesses, and they'd experienced many of the same challenges. At least professionally, that is, not necessarily the same personal shit show, thank goodness. And that's where the idea for the Visionary VA Circle community emerged from. I had finally reached a place where my business felt sustainable, where I had help from an amazing team, and where it felt possible to step back from day-to-day client support. It was time to give back and create something for others who were on their own journey to creating amazing, thriving businesses. So, in January 2024, I launched the Viva Facebook community, and we now have over 200 people in the group. VAs who already have agencies, VAs with small teams, large teams, people who want teams, people who aren't sure if they want teams just yet, if ever. I want to have the conversations that many people avoid, to get people talking about their big, audacious goals, to feel okay with having huge aspirations about money, and to be unapologetically ambitious. I've spent not just the last 6 years while growing my own business, but an entire lifetime working on my mindset and learning how to get the best out of myself. I'm self-aware, incredibly self-critical, but have also finally learned to be a little kinder to myself and to cut myself a bit of slack occasionally. Starting to train and compete horses again fills me with absolute joy, and that's something I've made sure my business has given me the ability to do. I get so much satisfaction from putting the hard work in and getting the results I want, not just in terms of competing, but in building a partnership, pushing myself out of my comfort zone and constantly learning. With the Viva community, I want to be the support to others that I couldn't find. And if I can help other VAs to accomplish their dreams through their businesses, just as I've been fortunate enough to do, then I'll be well and truly over the moon. I hope you'll join me again next week, where we'll start diving into some of the topics that will help you rethink your own mindset, how you approach running your business, and potentially building your very own dream team. Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the Visionary VA podcast. I hope you're walking away with fresh ideas and inspiration to scale your VA business. Don't forget to check out our free mini course on building solid business foundations, perfect for setting your VA agency up for success without the overwhelm. You'll find the link in the show notes. If you enjoyed the show, please don't forget to subscribe, like, and leave a review. See you next week.